Good morning, brethren. Welcome to another new day and another devotional. For our thoughts this morning, I want to turn to the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew chapter 21 and verses 28 and following. In this short reading, the Lord Jesus Christ tells another of his parables, the parable of the two sons. This is what he says. What do you think? A man has two sons, and he went to the first and said, Son, go and work in the vineyard. And he answered, I will not. But afterwards he changed his mind and went. And he went to the other son and said the same. And he answered, I go, sir. But he did not go. Which of the two did the will of the Father? This parable is about serving God. This parable is about being obedient to God's call to labour for him in his vineyard. Here you have two different types of people represented by these two sons. The master comes to his first son and he says, I want you to go and work in the vineyard today. And the initial reaction is, no, I'm not going to. Probably because he had other things to do, other things he was more interested in, or just because he was lazy and couldn't be bothered. But very soon after he had been asked to do this, indeed commanded to do it by his father, upon reflection he recognised that he ought to do what his father desired. And so he set aside the other things and he went and he worked in the vineyard. The second son, the father came to him and said the same. And he said, yes, I'll go and work. Yes. But the fact of the matter is that although he promised much and said he would do what the father had asked him to do, he ended up not doing it. It was the first son who actually responded the way he should have responded whenever he went and did the Father's will. God has called us to be his children. He has also called us to be his servants, those who work for him for the good of his kingdom. And on a very basic practical level, that means for us as Christians that we are people who are involved in and willing to serve in our local church. God may call us to serve him in a wider capacity, perhaps in our presbytery, perhaps in our wider denomination, perhaps even beyond our denomination. But first and foremost, he has called us to be involved in, to contribute to, and to be willing to take up responsibilities in our local congregation. This is God saying to us, go and work in my vineyard. And there are many things that can hinder us from doing that. Many other things that we have responsibilities for, but also many other things that we are more interested in. God calls us to be willing to set aside other things in order that we are involved in the work of the kingdom. It doesn't mean that we are to completely give up all our other interests. What it does mean is that we are to ensure that those interests do not hinder us from being involved in the local church's work. The church needs workers, not spectators. It needs people who are willing to step up to the mark and help when work is being done. Whether it's work among the young, being willing to offer your services as a Sabbath school teacher, a youth leader, being willing to come down and be a body present so as to make up the numbers when we are ministering to our young people, being willing to serve on camps as a camp officer, as a camp cook, as a leader, being willing to give practical help when practical help is needed at the church, if the church needs cleaned, if windows need repaired, whatever needs to be done. If the church decides to do outreach, to be willing to be there in order to go round the doors and put leaflets through or invite people to particular services. One of the greatest needs in the church today is for people to serve, to be workers. It's a sad fact that most churches will testify that there are far too many professing Christians who are willing to be spectators, not willing to be workers. This parable today teaches us that the way that a son should respond to the wishes of his father is to do what his father desires. If we are true children of God, we will serve him. Are you serving God in a practical way in your congregation? If you're not, ask your minister, ask your elders, how can I best serve in the congregation? May God bless you today.